Think outside the jewelry box as we look at new uses for traditional supplies today on Beads, Baubles, and Jewels.
Beads, Baubles and Jewels has been brought to you in part by Beading Daily, your jewelry making resource for how-to projects, books, magazines, DVDs, events, and online learning. BeadingDaily.com. Beadalon, a manufacturer of flexible bead stringing wires, memory wire, artistic wire, stringing materials, innovative findings, and tools to help you fashion your own jewelry. Beadalon.com. Create your style with Swarovski elements. eksuccessbrands.com/create your style with Swarovski elements. Halcraft, jewelry component manufacturer. Halcraft.com. Jewel School, a division of Jewelry Television. jtv.com/jewel school. TiaraCast, define your design with metal. TiaraCast.com.
Hi, I'm Katie Hacker, and thank you for joining us today on Beads, Baubles, and Jewels. This season, we are looking at different ways to think like a designer. Today's technique is think outside the box. Look at jewelry making supplies with fresh eyes. Most components can be used in many different ways, and especially ones they were never intended for. So let's start out with these layered button pendants. I created this look because I have a stash of vintage buttons and I just love using them in jewelry, but a lot of times you don't know how to connect them and really bring out their special qualities. So what I did is layer them together with some metal buttons and other components and wire. And the way you get started is to look at your different elements. So I have some buttons, I have some filigree, and these are all things that I'm going to stack together with the wire. And I chose to use twisted wire just because it adds a little bit of a decorative element to your wire wrapping without any extra work. So it's pre-twisted, and you want to cut between 4 to 6 inches depending on how big your components are going to be. Now, it's easy to start. All you do is choose a large button, and this one happens to be the mother of pearl look that is so pretty and luminous. I love it with crystals. And I layered it with a metal button, and you just put it right on your wire. And then I just added this little decorative flower to the top, and I'll show you why. Because when you use buttons with holes, you can use some other element to cover it up. Now you could leave it exposed if you want everyone to know it's a button, but this gives it a little bit of a different look and a little more decorative. And you can use spacer beads or other filigree for that same purpose. So once you have them all stacked together, then you're going to sort of cheat the wire so that the long end is in the front. And fold them to the top, and I'll use a chain nose pliers for this to just make a right angle here above the button. And then I use my round nose pliers, and that's just to make a loop. And you can use either wire to make your loop. I like to use the shorter wire because then you can use it for the decorative part. So you just bring these together, then hold the loop with the pliers and make sure that this long wire is inside the loop like that, and then you wrap them together. So you get a little bit of coiling there, and that's really what is connecting all of your pieces together. Now, if you wanted to instead add beads, what you could do is use a different piece of wire. Just cut, again, 4 to 6 inches. And you already have your elements stacked here. So you're going to pass them through again, covering all of your pieces. And this will give you a little bit more decorative look. You could also just have attached that basic loop to a finding, like a bail. So here you make your 90 degrees, and then make another loop. This time, let's do the coiling. So we'll just hold it here, then wrap this around. So now we'll trim off this extra piece instead of making a loop like we did before and add some beads. These are just a combination of metal beads and a crystal. And it gives you some more, you might want to bring in some color here. I chose clear so that it reflects with the luminous button. Then you just want to use your round nose pliers to make a loop here at the top. Coil it around, and you can attach a bail. And bails give you another more decorative look. And I like the way they look in a design because it also gives you an opportunity to bring in some more different colors of metal. And mixing metals is so hot right now with gold and copper and silver all together in the same piece, like you can see here. So now I'm ready to trim this up. And this is going to make a really fun pendant for the center of your necklace. And you can see that everything will lay nice and neat when you're finished, and that daisy is covering the holes in the middle. Let's take a look at some of the other, well, let's look at this pendant that is similar to the one I just made. So it's the same idea. You have a big button with a filigree and then a daisy on top, and you combine some metal spacers and crystals and a bail. And I just put that on a simple chain, but of course you could bead it up. So this necklace is an example of adding some beads. We have some crystal there and a filigree piece in the center, and this is a bead cap. So that's another way of taking a piece that's not intended really as a topper, but using it as a topper for this pendant, and I love that look too. And bringing in the different metallics with the pattern chain is a really nice way to blend it all together. Then if you take a look at the white necklace with the gold filigree on top, that one has a spacer bead that's covering the holes in the center. And again, same technique, I just used a very thin gauge of twisted wire to give it a really delicate look. And that piece makes really great earrings too. And then these necklaces, I used filigree for the pendant and then layered on top. And the gold pieces here and the silver piece on this necklace are bead caps. So I just turned them upside down and used them as another layering element on the piece. And I think you're gonna see some really great designs on the rest of today's show. Here's a little preview. First, Mary Hettmansperger shows how to use cold connections with pewter spacers to create a dimensional necklace. Then, Molly Schaller is back with the Greek goddess necklace using sliders in another way, plus making graduated dangles. And finally, Stitch Pro Jean Campbell shares an outside-the-box tip for preserving your beadwork. Mary is up first. I'm here with designer and author Mary Hettmansperger. Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
I love this necklace that you made. The spacing of the elements is what makes it perfect.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I really like the whole idea of building up dimension in pieces. So this is just a really great, easy way to accomplish that.
Yeah, and you're really using your components in new ways.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just, when you look at the components, a little bit differently, you can come up with all sorts of great ideas. Well, to start out with, basically, I take copper sheeting and silver sheeting. And both of these are 24 gauge, which is really not a huge weight, but it's really nice to work with. Also, what's nice is you can cut them. So I basically cut the shape I want, and I take my torch and I anneal it and put a patina on it and get it ready so that it's easy to hammer and texture. And I do that with just a regular ball peen hammer and texturing hammer, and I use an anvil, and then it's ready to go.
Okay, because you are all about the custom surfaces.
Well, I do love them. And basically, I'm going to show you how to put this one together. And this is just using some really nice decorative discs. And I first start out with the whole process of doing an eyelet. And what's nice about an eyelet is you can actually come in from either side, because the end process should look the same. So I'm actually going to come in from the base. And part of the reason I do that is because I don't want to turn this around and hammer into these little components. So I can take one of the little components here, and if you'll notice, the hole's a little bit bigger. So you have to kind of use a smaller piece, a smaller bead to come in and sort of
cover up that hole a
little bit.
Now, let me ask you about how you punch the holes in the metal. Did you just use a simple punch?
I just used a hole punch, yeah, okay. Just use a hole punch. You can use a drill, but just make sure that you have size is going to be comparison what you need. The eyelets are great. I have a little eyelet setter, and I come in like this, and pretty much
just give it a tap.
Well, very much, just a very small tap. I always say the very small, and it takes almost nothing to set it.
Oh, that's so great.
It is. And I always, when I get all three of these done, what I really like to do is punch all my holes in my front part first, and they're like a template for the back side. So when I go in to connect the back side, what I do is come in and hold it where I want it, and I'm going to grab my hole punch here. And you want to just make sure things are lined up. Now, one thing I've always told students when I teach is you want to poke one at a time and set it. Because what happens is it never fails that if you line them all up, when you get to that point, they're not going to line up, you know, on the back side. So now you need to make the decision of how deep you want to go. And if you look here, on this particular one, I have just one spacer bead, and that fits that necklace really good. So here's just a few examples of different sizes of necklaces.
Oh, right, so you could adjust the spacing to fit your necklace cord or stringing material.
And I'm just going to use a nut and a bolt on this one, and basically I come in and take the little spacers.
And you know what? I like mixing all the different colors of metal together.
Oh, and it's great. On several, I will actually go in and mix even the discs together, which is great fun. And then come in like this, and then take your little nut and
fit it on there.
Fit it on there and screw it on. What I do then is cut the piece, cut the end off, and then hammer it down gently.
So that you don't have any scratchy surface there?
Exactly.
Do you have to file it at all?
You can, but what I've found is a lot of times I'll get a pair of pliers and hold that and then cut it. And I've got my cutters right here so I can show you. And basically you want a pair of cutters that are going to really cut a nice flat surface. Let me cut that. There we go.
Okay,
and you
so
can
it's pretty
see,
flat already.
Yeah, you're really wanting about maybe a card's thickness. And then when you come in to hammer, basically, I do this when I've got all of them, but I'm going to go ahead and show you. I basically come in and just start to spread that around a little bit.
Okay, so you don't want to cut it extremely flush. You need a little bit.
You need a little bit. Now you
down.
can just, you know, glue it, but I think actually this makes it a lot softer. And then you can even come in with steel wool and you know, really grab that if there's any sharp edges.
Right.
The other really nice thing about steel wool is you can come in and actually sand up your sides too, and make a little bit of a shine, which is real fun.
Yeah, it
after you've
really
gotten
nice
your patina.
Wearable too.
Very wearable, yeah, very wearable. So that's basically how that one's put together. This one here, I wanted to also talk a little bit about just the idea of when you're designing, how to start from the top down. And I wanted to show you this connection. This is actually a brad. And what's nice is it looks like a, you know, like a rivet.
Like it's been riveted.
But it's really not.
And it'll be hidden on the backside too. And that, what a great way to use buttons.
Exactly. And this is a button component. And when you do it this way, it actually takes away that kind of that button look. It looks more like a component of jewelry. And then you come in and so you just lay it in there and then open it up in the back.
Smart.
And then you can hammer it and
work from
like I said, work
down.
from the top down. So then this one would get connected to the silver piece with smaller eyelets, and then the silver piece would get connected to the copper with longer eyelets.
Okay, let's take a look at this necklace over here, because this shows the spacers and that dimension that you're talking about.
And it really does show how deep you can get with the process too.
Right, so you attach all the elements to the front piece, then the middle piece, then back. And then on this necklace, now we've seen these used as multi-strand spacers.
Right.
This is really outside the box right here to use them as a decorative element. I love it.
It's perfect because it's already got the right size holes. It's wonderful.
Oh, so you can just connect it right to it.
And this one here is a clasp. You know, this is actually a clasp that I took and connected it in one place and then connected where the hole was at.
The copper piece right there in the center.
Right.
That looks great. Thank you so much, Mary. And up next is Molly Schaller. I'm here with designer Molly Schaller, and today we're talking about taking elements outside the box and using them in different ways. And Molly, this is beautiful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I love this necklace and how you've used the sliders.
Thanks. I decided to do something a little different this time and use the sliders almost in a pendant drop way. But in order to balance that out design-wise, I had to make these little graduated dangles that almost read as little like half pyramids all the way around the necklace.
Right, it gives it a really symmetrical feel. And this is a statement. You're making a statement with this piece here.
Definitely.
Right, so how do we get started with those dangle sections?
Well, what you do is usually I'll grab a few strands of beads that I think kind of coordinate pretty well together, and I'll kind of create, usually I'll go with the 1, 2, 3, 2, 1 on head pins. And I lay them out first to make sure that I like the way they fit together. Bicones in general work really well on the ends, and they kind of pocket themselves inside of the rounds or other bicones. So those are good shapes to use when you're making this kind of graduated look. And you're just going to make simple loops. You're going to do that. I usually trim right after I bend. And try to hold on to the end there. And just make a simple loop as you go around.
With your round nose pliers.
With your round nose pliers.
And basic loops are the quick and easy one.
They are. You just have to make sure that they really touch on this because the wire is pretty thin onto which you're stringing it.
So make sure it's very closed.
Yep. And so once you've got your dangles made, and I go ahead and I make all the dangles at once for the entire necklace because it's easier to kind of do that one thing at once.
Sure.
And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start the stringing because once you have the dangles made, really all this is stringing. And let's go ahead and I'll show you how I crimp. Everybody does that.
Yeah, the two-step process on crimping or three-step. And we should mention your beading wire using 19 strand because it has good flexibility.
Yeah, I like this one. It's strong enough, but it's flexible because the drape's pretty important in this necklace.
Yes, it does make a really nice drape.
And when I'm doing this, I decided to go ahead and with my clasp, I've already got the jump rings on it, and I'm just going to attach to the jump rings that are already attached to the clasp. So
that makes it nice in case you want to switch out your clasp later.
Yeah, you don't have to cut the wire again or recrimp. So I went ahead and I'm going to pull this. I usually like to pull it relatively tight, but I don't like to push it all the way up to the jump ring.
Yeah, it can make things go a little funky there at the end.
And of course, the important thing is to not let those wires go where they want to go. You don't want them to cross or else your crimp won't be secure. I do the outside, I do a three.
You do the
three-step, but yeah.
Make it an oval.
The outside.
Then crease it on the inside.
Yeah, and I found the thing that I think people have problems with sometimes with crimping is they crimp the second step too hard.
Yes,
and
it's
it
a really
squishes the sides.
Gentle motion there.
And then you can fold it in half, and I like to kind of go up and down just to make sure that it's a nice secure, and I always test it. So then all you have left to do is your stringing. And these components are really nice, and they are meant to have two strands going through them, but you don't have to use them that way. So these have really great channels on the backs, double loops on each side to use. And when I'm starting my necklace, usually I'll start with a smaller group of dangles, like these three, so that you cut a little bit less on the back.
Since it's in the back anyway.
Yeah.
Keep it comfortable.
I'm sorry, reach across here.
Oh,
So
that's okay.
I'm going to start with this small one, and I'll just string along here until I get to the part where I want to put the dangles on.
So you start establishing your pattern, and we'll have the complete instructions for this on the website too.
So get going. Let's see, I'm about ready for bicone. And then I can put on a couple of my dangles. And I'll just do one set, this small set of dangles, and then...
So also you're stringing a bead in between each of these, right? So that's helping them lay in that triangular pattern.
It is, and you have to find the right size. If the bead's too big, then they don't read as kind of one unit, but if the bead's too small, they ruffle. But the other part of this necklace that does take a little bit of construction is the pendant. Now this pendant on the first necklace I showed you came as a pendant on a card, but I thought that to go with these brighter gold components, it'd be nice to use these this one with brighter gold stones.
Sure, you want it, and because you're using that bright, and this is a slider too, right?
It is.
So it's giving you another use for a slider,
Yeah.
as you can just create the pendant.
So instead of using the loops on the back, I went ahead and I decided to just use this coordinating bead, slide it on here, and make a simple loop. Although the side that I'm putting around this little heart shape is a little bit larger loop so that it'll be able to dangle freely instead of getting stuck on the sides. Make a regular loop. I cut that guy a little bit big, but that's what I needed. Make a loop, and then you can just attach it to the heart shape, like that.
Great, so that makes your pendant. And then once you have your pattern, then you have your graduated dangles, and then a slider, then you just repeat until you get to the center of the necklace.
And then you can string your pendant and do the same thing all the way around to the other side.
All right, well, let's take a look at your piece again. This is beautiful, and I love the color palette that you chose. Really nice and monochromatic, but giving you another use there for the sliders is really smart.
Thank you.
And tell us about the gray one.
This one is interesting too in that it uses actually 3 different types of sliders. One slider is this graduated gray slider here. This is kind of a lightning bolt little slider. And then this piece here and also the pendant down at the bottom are created of multiple sliders wired together just using head pins. So I'd put a head pin through the channels, and so it creates a rigid plate almost that I used as a pendant there. And then here it's the loop of the kind of like the ring part of a toggle clasp almost.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of goes through there.
Clever. Well,
Or the
let's take
bar.
a quick look at your turquoise necklace too. You have some dangles, and again with the sliders. And this is instead of making your graduated pins, you could use
Yep.
a drop. These are some great ideas. Thank you so much,
You're
Molly.
welcome.
We will be right back with Jean Campbell. I'm here with Jean Campbell, Stitch Pro, and she has a great outside-the-box idea for us today using acrylic floor polish. Who knew?
Who knew? It's a great tip.
Yeah, and I guess this is something that people do with beadwork, but I didn't know about it, and it really, you can tell. It gives it some structure here on this piece that you made.
What we do is we dip the finished beadwork in acrylic floor polish, and it protects the beadwork and helps shape it.
Well, that is really, really a great tip. And this one you can see is not
That one's
dipped.
not dipped.
And so it has less, do you call it, I guess, structure?
Well, you can even just see the shapes are different. One's kind of floppy and the other one's nice and part.
Okay, so show us how you do this.
Basically, the setup is I have, a pie plate under here. You can use anything that is kind of throwaway, plastic and paper toweling. The acrylic floor polish comes in a big bottle, so I didn't bring it. I put it in this little bottle.
All right, more manageable anyway.
That's right. And you can get it at the grocery store. I just pour a little bit into a cup, and you don't need a whole lot. I have a plastic paintbrush that's just like from a kid's watercolor set. And I just slop it all over the finished beadwork. Now, you have to be careful about what you're slopping on. Matte beads are going to get shiny. You have to be careful on that. And, if you've got anything with like an aftermarket, crystals with an aftermarket finish on them, you want to test those beforehand. And I'll show you why in a minute. If you've got a piece like this, you're going to want to go do the beadwork kind of around the edges and not just slop it all over the here.
Okay, so on a piece like this, you're sealing the gold beads because they have a metallic finish that could come off over time. So you're kind of sealing the finish on the bead, but you're also protecting the thread.
It's mainly for these because they're a permanent finish metallic bead.
Oh, so it's not to protect the beads,
right?
really.
It's to seal those threads so that they're not moving.
Okay, and on this area, you have crystal to crystal, so you're trying to prevent abrasion there.
Yeah, the holes of crystals are sharp, and so you want to make sure that that angle isn't going to be cutting your thread. So I slop it on there, and then I'll turn it over, lift it up, do the other side, and I check to make sure, I'll come back and touch it every once in a while so there isn't any pooling or, mess.
Right, and you definitely want to make sure it doesn't stick to your paper towel.
Right, it won't, it'll soak in, but it's okay. And this is a trick that polymer clay artists have used for years, and I know I've been doing it for 10 years, and I haven't had any problem with yellowing or anything like that. So the only problem I have had is this, the polish stripping color, and I'll show you what happens.
Okay.
Come over here. These are actually the same bracelets that I showed here. And this was the first thing that I ever dipped. And I slopped it all over, including this crystal, and the color stripped right off. This is how the color should be.
Okay, so the ones that have that aftermarket coating on the crystal are the ones you have to be careful with. A regular crystal, it actually would make it shinier.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. I also brought some samples of other kind of jewelry that you might dip. This is, again, crystal to crystal. This is seed beads connected with crystals, and you don't want to have that abrasion between. And then this piece is very shaped. And so
yes, it's sculptural. I love that piece.
So to keep
Beautiful.
those little braids up, the dipping works really well.
So you're actually giving it a little bit of stiffness with the acrylic floor polish.
It gives it body. And you know, people say, oh, is it too stiff? Does it feel unnatural? It doesn't at all.
Well,
It feels.
that gives us a perfect chance to talk about this necklace.
This
Because
necklace.
You would worry about it being too stiff.
Well, and this piece has to be dipped. I mean, if I were, teaching this to someone, I would say you have to dip this, because otherwise the threads are just gonna pop.
Because of the abrasion.
It's all crystal, and so you have to be really careful with the crystal to crystal connection.
Okay, well, this is a great outside the box technique. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Katie.
And sometimes all it takes is a fresh perspective on materials you already have. On our next show, it's all about making connections. I hope you can join us.
Instructions for today's projects, plus other ideas, techniques, and information are available on the web at beadsbaublesandjewels.com. Today's show is number 1710. If you enjoyed today's show and want to see more projects and great guests, you can order a DVD set of the entire Beads, Baubles and Jewels Series 1700. All 13 episodes plus bonus content featuring soldering techniques with Kate Richborg and spiral herringbone with Jean Campbell, only available in this DVD set. Order at beadsbaublesandjewels.com for $29.99 plus shipping and handling. Don't miss a single episode and get these bonus projects. Beads, Baubles and Jewels has been brought to you in part by Beading Daily, your jewelry making resource for how-to projects, books, magazines, DVDs, events, and online learning. Beadingdaily.com. Beadalon, a manufacturer of flexible bead stringing wires, memory wire, artistic wire, stringing materials, innovative findings, and tools to help you fashion your own jewelry. Beadalon.com. Create your style with Swarovski elements. eksuccessbrands.com/create your style with Swarovski elements. Halcraft, jewelry component manufacturer. Halcraft.com. Jewel School, a division of Jewelry Television. jtv.com/jewel school. TiaraCast, define your design with metal. TiaraCast.com.